There's something about this card that I'm still trying to like wrap my head around when it comes to placement of the fights. There must be something about Aspen Ladd and Macy Chiasson that they absolutely love in the UFC. And for me, it's very much creating prospects in the 135 division. That's my biggest explanation for it. And Aspen Ladd was probably one of the biggest and hottest names in women's MMA for the 135 division before Jermaine Durandamy just ended everything. A lot of people were calling for that fight to be a early stoppage, but at the same time, the way she knocked her, it's like Herb Dean can't win. He either is stopping fights too soon or he's stopping fights too late. Poor guy can't win with the public. But in that fight, for the type of striker that Jermaine Durandamy is, she not only landed, dropped her, she came in clean with a second punch. And I think that if she didn't have Herb Dean in front of her and had to rush and start landing bows, a fighter like Jermaine Durandamy, who has such good striking, will most likely get those bows in, will land those big shots to be able to at least get that ground and pound finish. So for me, I still don't think it was an early stoppage. I know a lot of people probably disagree with me, but all in all, Aspen Ladd, for that to be her first career loss, not such a bad thing. Popular as hell, over 150,000 followers on Instagram. It's one of those things where Invicta, poised to be a champion, now is in the UFC. And I think that in this fight against Macy Chiasson, she has an interesting test in front of her. Now, you look at a fighter like Macy Chiasson, classic story of tough winner, then starts to get her feet wet with some of the bigger names and better competition. And funny enough, the only person to really beat her was Lena Landsberg, a fighter that, Aspen Ladd had the pleasure of beating. And so in that fight, you just noticed that if you don't want to be in the clinch and be in the striking distance of Macy Chiasson, take her down. The cool thing about her record that, really stood out to me is any fight where people have not gone for takedowns or haven't been able to land them, she's been able to mess them up. You talk about the Sarah Morris fight, she got the one, and immediately after that, Macy Chiasson finished in the second. But the one that stands out for me big time is the Lena Landsberg fight, because you can talk about how she lost the first round, Landsberg that is, and then in the second and third, it was like, oh my God, I can't strike with this girl. I can't be in the clinch with this girl. Let me take this fight to the ground and just start laying out some ground and pound. And that's how she won the fight. She, in fact, I believe got a 10-8 in one of those rounds, if I remember correctly. So the way I see this fight playing out is, again, massive chess match, right? I do think from a lines perspective, it would shock me if they're really, really far separated, because you can see in the Yana Kunitskaya fight for Aspen Ladd, and just so you understand why I love coaching so much in this sport versus any other sport, go watch the Aspen Ladd and Yana Kunitskaya fight, and then go look at the coaching at the end of the second round and what happens in the third. There's something about that relationship that I'll never get over, and it's why coaching in this sport is such a big thing for me. And in that fight, you can clearly see Aspen Ladd having to deal with the clinch work and her back's against the fence, but it's a boring fight and she's not really losing it. She's able to get some good areas where she can actually reverse it on Yana. And to be honest, she even got this one elbow hold that pushed her right off the fence. She turned that into a double leg and got it right down to the ground. There's a couple of times she was even able to just lock up a body lock and get it to the ground, even though Yana was the one trying to create pressure against the fence. So for me, in those areas where Macy loves to fight, the Muay Thai clinch, landing big knees and elbows, stuff like that, Aspen Ladd's going to be looking for those big takedowns. Now, other thing I want to point out about Aspen Ladd is, trust me, this layoff that she's had, which has lasted quite some time, girl has been beasting. Go look at the weight cut. Go look at how she's been looking this week heading into the fight. It's insane. The girl's looking deezed. And for me, that's actually a great sign. Macy Chiasson's long. She's going to be lankier. She's going to have that distance striking capability, which she always does. And I think she could actually be the better striker in this fight, without question. But up against the fence, in that clinch where she does a lot of her damage, works it to the ground and pound type of finisher, both these girls are kind of the same in that way. They both love the ground and pound. I do give the grappling and wrestling edge to Aspen Ladd. It's very difficult for me to be able to say that, it should go Macy's way, especially in terms of the challengers that Aspen Ladd has fought over the years is just insane for her age. And that's what makes me really excited to watch, the younger Aspen Ladd, who seems to have all of the UFC, experience on her side, take on the older Macy Chiasson, who's, 8-1, just one less fight in the MMA world. But trajectory is very high. And so for me, when you're looking at the numbers, defense, 46% across the board, for me, it's the strikes absorbed. I feel like Aspen Ladd takes a lot more damage to be able to get the fight where she needs to go. Whereas, Macy Chiasson's a great striker, 2.17 strikes absorbed over the course of a minute. That's really important. And she's able to land at a 4.16 with, Aspen Ladd coming as a 5.22. Now, I will say that I believe that most of Macy Chiasson's work is coming within the clinch and that Muay Thai area and some ground and pound, whereas Aspen Ladd is very much a ground and pound style fighter, which is where a lot of those numbers are coming from. And in terms of takedown defense, both these girls at 66% for Aspen and 64% for Macy, but this is the big one. Takedown accuracy for Aspen Ladd is 75% with 2.45 takedowns averaged per fight. So for me, I'm really curious to see if she's able to get this fight to the ground early, because if she does and creates a lot of damage, Macy is not going to be the same fighter she is for 2 to 3 rounds. You look at the Marion Renault fight, right? That wasn't a clean-cut victory. I actually sprinkled on Marion Renault in that fight, and frankly, it was a 29-28 across the board, with Macy really having to turn it up later in the fight. So with both these girls having great cardio, the ability to kind of gauge the fight early on and see where it needs to go, that's what makes me very excited about this. And because for the female ranks to have a chess match of this caliber is so exciting for me, because I think it's what's going to create a lot of the future champion potential for all these ladies. It's just what makes these fighters championship caliber. And I think that when we see these girls go at it, if Macy's able to do crazy amount of damage in that clinch and avoid some of these big takedowns where she's on her back and can't get out of it, that's a big showing for her against a girl like Aspen Ladd. But then you look at Aspen Ladd, who seems to be the younger fighter, but playing spoiler to the up-and-comer. It's kind of an interesting place to be. So for me, lines-wise, I think it should be pretty close to a pick-em. I think Aspen Ladd has way more areas that she could win the fight, especially as the better grappler. Because I think Macy's looking for long looping punches, then getting it up against the fence and using knees and elbows, stuff like that. You have to get another fighter there. For me, when you look at Aspen Ladd's skills, it's like not only can you take a punch from most people except the Jermaine Durandamies of the world, she can actually work this to the ground pretty technically outside of the way Macy Chiasson fights, because it's not like Macy Chiasson is coming here with big power, knocking people out right, left, and center. She's a gradual fighter. She likes to work the ground and pound. She breaks people. And I think Aspen Ladd's the exact same way. So that's what makes this fight so damn exciting. So for me, we're going to end with Aspen Ladd being a favorite. I think it should be only a slight favorite. If Macy's coming in as anything more than a plus 120 or plus 130, maybe a plus 140, I'd be a little surprised. I just think that there's an underdog argument for anything close to plus 200 would just be classic case of female fighting where maybe some extra homework needs to be done by us, because that's a tough fight. And if you can call it either way, kudos to you. So let's take a look. A part of me thinks, even without talking to anybody, I'm going to be shocked out of my pants. But yeah, so opening line, minus 188 for Aspen Ladd and plus 140 for Macy. And it looks like it's kind of hovering in that area right now. Some areas are actually giving Aspen Ladd the minus 150, with Macy coming as a plus 140. And for me, I think that's all based on UFC experience and stylistic base. I just think that she's going to be the better wrestler. She's got great grappling. And the fact that Macy has to take the fight into those clinch areas to do most of her damage, then work it to the ground and get that ground and pound going, for me, is a huge red flag going into this, which makes Aspen Ladd the favorite in my mind. Whether that's the same analysis going into Vegas's lines, I'm not sure, but there's a good reason for me to suggest that this line makes sense, but I just can't see it going any further. I think that Macy Chiasson has a good amount of, recency bias for her. So once the recent fighting fans and all those people kind of roll in, it could maybe spell for a bit more of a closer line come fight night. But outside of that, I think there is a dog opportunity here if that's your cup of tea, but Aspen Ladd is just such an underrated fighter overall, and I think the long layoff might have had people forget a little bit about who she is, but that Yana Kunitskaya fight leading into this fight has me believing that she could be, the winner of this could either be a future title contender, but Aspen Ladd has that very much in close reach with a couple big wins, so this should be a great start to that for both fighters.